Terry was actually camping in 40 degrees of heat, whereas we were in hotels, you know, I'm afraid. But anyway, that's the way it is. Yes, this was the great American eclipse, and much hyped American eclipse. And the part of the world that we went to, as Terry says, was Wyoming. Ha! And you'll recognize that chart. Terry's just put it up in here somewhere. And as Terry said, it came from one end right to the other, and we were just about on the point of that little arrow. But actually, one of our members who's here tonight, Adam, he was way down here where the weather forecast was hopeless, and he managed to see it. Is that right, Adam? And not only that, but he got his picture in the Washington Post, no less. So well done, Adam. That was brilliant. Anybody else see the eclipse, by the way? Well, this one. Yeah. Well done, Flip. We could have had 5 minutes each here. Well done. Well done. Whereabouts did you go?
Illinois.
California?
Illinois.
Illinois. Oh yeah, Illinois. Very good. Well, as I say, we went to Idaho, which was up here, and it's supposed to be in the rain shadow area of these mountains, and I'll come on to that in a moment or two. But the thing about Idaho was, whenever we were reading up on it, basically everybody said, there's nothing in Idaho actually. There's very little. But as I say, my whole eclipse trip was totally different. We went on an organised tour. Now, my wife Shirley has no interest in astronomy basically, but she comes because she's forced to go, as long as we stay somewhere reasonable, and she'll come along to the eclipse, she'll enjoy it, and all the rest of it. So our base was actually Salt Lake City, which is down here. And I'll show you more Salt Lake City in a moment, right beside the Great Salt Lake. And we then headed from Salt Lake City up to this place here called Idaho Falls, and our eclipse site was just a little bit further north up here to a place called Menin Buttes, or Menin Buttes, or Menin Butts, or whatever. And more of that in a moment. But anyway, as I say, it was an organised tour, and there was about 40 in our bus, and there was actually 4 buses. So we headed up from Idaho Falls to just about here, and you can sort of see a river here. That's called the Snake River, and to be honest with you, there wasn't a lot. But anyway, did anybody make it to Salt Lake City? Yeah. Apart from Terry, yeah? Salt Lake City, well done, Hayden. Salt Lake City, beautiful place, a population of around 200,000. We didn't see anybody. There was virtually nobody in it. A very, very nice central area, and of course you'll know it was formed by the Mormons, 1846. But really, really nice, and we stayed in a very nice hotel in it. And this is their sort of congressional building, and to me it just looked like Stormont with a city hall stuck on top of it. But very, very nice building, very pleasant, and indeed the whole of Salt Lake City was very pleasant. And you get down into the centre of it, and it's got this Temple Square area, beautiful. Temperatures were always around 30, 33, that sort of figure, very, very nice. And this is the headquarters for the Mormons, and of course we had a tour of the Mormon facilities. And this building over here with a sort of outline of the world, that's the Family History Centre, and we spent a couple of hours in there, and they had our family history. As you know, the Mormons collect your family history, and they baptize you into Mormonism. So it means I can have as many wives as I want now. Only joking. The temple area itself, strictly speaking, you're not allowed into the temple, but we managed to, one of the guides was a local Mormon, and she took us round, and it was very impressive, I have to say. Very strange, because there's none of the iconography that you normally associate with our churches and chapels, etc. But very pleasant, the whole centre of Salt Lake City, very, very nice. And as I say, we were struck at how few people there were around, apart from what they call the panhandlers. There's a lot of people who were homeless, and quite a few of those people around. This is a statue of the founder of Salt Lake City, Brigham Young, and his wife. Interestingly, he had 55 wives, whatever you say. And he had this nice quote, which I found engraved in something: "A chip on the shoulder is a sure sign of wood further up." And I thought that was quite good. Anyway, back to some sort of astronomy. The Clark Planetarium's in Salt Lake City. It's quite a famous planetarium. In fact, it's excellent. I spent a couple of visits at the Clark Planetarium. It has a very nice IMAX theatre, and it has also a nice planetarium dome. And, of course, it was the focus for Eclipse trip. We didn't actually see very much about the eclipse. Even though Salt Lake City's relatively close, there was very little in the early days about, when I say the early days, a week before. And then we got to the Clark Planetarium, and you can see eclipse glasses sold out. And there was a big long queue inside it. And even though it said sold out in the door, they were all asking the same question: have you got any eclipse glasses? Now, unfortunately, I had about 2 dozen, which I'd managed to pick up, but I forgot to bring them with me. Otherwise, I could have made a bomb. So here we are in Idaho Falls. Idaho Falls, very pleasant place. In fact, it's just got a long weir, and the water sort of tumbles over this weir. Except for the day we arrived, there wasn't any falls. They were having a duck race. They put all these plastic ducks in, and you bet money on which one's going to cross the line and all this sort of stuff. But they turned it back on for us. And it was only really once we got to Idaho Falls that there was any mention of the eclipse, apart from Clark Planetarium. And this is a view of Idaho Falls from the bridge. There's a bridge across this river, and you can see the Mormon temple in the background. But then we started to see a few cars. And before the eclipse, it was hugely hyped in the media. And Terry and I are on a forum, and there was all this talk about Carmageddon. This was going to be the biggest event in American history, and the roads were going to be solid chock-a-block. Now, I know that some people did get that, but we didn't. We hardly saw any cars, to be honest with you. But you started to see people with their four-wheel drives, eclipse or bust, and all this sort of good stuff, and the atmosphere started to pick up a little bit, and we started to feel, hey, we're here for the right reason. As I say, I was part of an organised tour, and some of you might recognise some of these commandos. This fella here is a presenter on Scat Night, Pete Lawrence. He's a very accomplished astrophotographer and a good lad, a personality. This other guy is also a presenter, as Dr. Paul Abel. He's from University of Leicester, and he actually does very pretty drawings of eclipses, which I didn't know until we got talking. And does anybody know who this other fella is? He's a presenter on Stargazing Live. That's John Culshaw. Now, John Culshaw is a phenomenon. I think probably Terry knows him. He's an absolute phenomenon. So I'm hoping my next wee bit might work. I'll see how we get on here.
For questions from your organization, that is terrible. Get it out of here.
Unfortunately, the volume's not great.
Always the first person that people ask for. And they're calling this the Great American Eclipse. It's going to be the Great American Eclipse, the Great Eclipse of America, the Great American Eclipse. We're making eclipses great again. All the jokes that I normally do in London, I probably can't do. Making America great again, one paranoid deluded tweet at a time. He's always the best character that people ask for. But I gotta say, the eclipse is cancelled. I'm going to move the moon. I am not having the moon blocking out our sunlight.
Anyway, Culture was entirely entertaining for the whole trip. This is our bus. It's of particular interest, of course, because if you go on an eclipse, one of the main things is there a toilet? Because you tend to head out into the middle of nowhere, and we've had some previous experiences where toilets were not provided, and it turned into a bit of a nightmare. You know, it was luxury, beautiful, you know, what can I say? If anybody's thinking of doing a trip like this, I would do this again. On the day before the eclipse, we're getting close to the eclipse now. On the day before the eclipse, we drove off to another park, and you may have noticed we were talking just before the talk actually about the number of parks, state parks there are. Well, there was a nice little state park beside us. It was called the Craters of the Moon Park. So we did a trip, and we drove for about 4 hours through Idaho, and it was just the same the whole drive. But our driver used to work in this place here, and it's called EBR-1, and it was the world's first nuclear power station. Now, some of you know I'm from the energy industry. I used to work for NIE, and I'm very interested in all this stuff. And I was chatting away to him, and he said this was a phenomenal place to work because they used to get sent in overalls to clear out the reactor waste material, and they buried it in 40-gallon drums in Idaho because nobody lives there. And they talk about Idaho being the great desert, the great elevated desert, but actually it's more like scrubland. So in the distance we could see this EBR1, and it's not far from this wee town called Arco, and Arco was one of the first towns, I think there may have been other places, but Arco was one of the first cities in the world to be lit by atomic power. And in fact, the first electricity which came out powered a 200-watt bulb in Arco, and that's their claim to fame. It was very interesting. And of course, all this radioactive debris has now been dug up because the good people of Idaho are saying, we don't want this rubbish, buried in the ground. And they were going to transport it to New Mexico. And then the people in New Mexico said, you're not bringing it here. So I don't know where they're going to send it. Maybe North Korea, I don't know. But anyway, this is Craters of the Moon Park, day before the eclipse. And Craters of the Moon Park is very like Tenerife. If you've been up onto the top of Tenerife, it's very, very like that. And this is our group from the bus. You can see it's actually not a sort of an 1820 holiday. Most of the inhabitants, probably Shirley and I, were probably about the youngest on the bus. But anyway, it was a great trip, and we very much enjoyed the company. A lot of strange people go on eclipse trips, I'm telling you. But the big thing about eclipses is weather. Weather. Just the same as, it's location. And a couple of days before the eclipse, we started to watch the television with great interest. And I have to say, as we counted down towards the eclipse, the forecast wasn't very good. In fact, it was awful. And you can see this whole green area was predicted thunderstorms and rain clouds in the area. And I don't know why you can see Salt Lake City, there it is there. And you can see Salt Lake City right in the middle of all this clag. So we started worrying. In fact, I said to Shirley, we're not going to see it. We're just not going to see it. And here was the forecast, and the eclipse was on Monday, and it didn't look terribly good, I have to say. And we were very much worried about whether or not we're going to see it at all. And of course, there were very regular reports right along the path of totality, and a lot of them were predicting we're not going to see it. And this was the night before the eclipse, I think. And it was saying, will clouds ruin your view? And our opinion was, yeah, they probably will, because you can see Salt Lake City had a 68% chance. Now, we were some miles, maybe 3 or 4 hours north of Salt Lake City, but nevertheless, having travelled all that distance, I have to say, I was feeling somewhat worried. Once we got to Idaho Falls, to be honest with you, the sky was clear. There were no clouds at all. We didn't see any. And of course, the place was starting to come down with people who were there for the eclipse, and there was a lot of cars, and there was a lot of news reporters. And literally, we stayed in this funny-looking hotel here. I have to say, it was the worst hotel of 5 that we stayed in, but it was our base for 3 nights. And right outside the front door, was Fox News. And as soon as we stepped outside, they said, where are you from? And we said, we're from Ireland. Right, we're going to interview you. So they immediately interviewed us. And here is Shirley, my wife, and they interviewed her as well. And they spotted that she had her nails painted with Eclipse. Now, there's a story behind these nails, because Shirley gets her nails done in Bangor, and the lady did this beautiful pearlescent nail. I gave her a wee picture of previous eclipses, but you couldn't see it, so I had to go over it with yellow paint. But anyway, this was broadcast on Fox News on the evening news, which was very impressive. And then we started to see things like eclipse glasses for sale. Now, the most expensive pair we saw was $50. Now, this is the day before the eclipse, right? And I'm going, I've got about 20 pairs of eclipse glasses here. Whether he actually sold any pairs or not, I'm not sure. But eclipse glasses started to become very important. And there was lots and lots and lots of t-shirts. However, we were so worried about Carmageddon that the day of the eclipse, we got up at 5:20. The eclipse was 10:30 in the morning. We had a journey under normal circumstances that would have taken half an hour, maybe 35 minutes. But we got up at 5:20 to see the eclipse at 10:30, the start of it anyway. And when we got on the road, we could see, hey, there's a few clouds here. But basically, it was beautifully clear. And when I stepped out of the hotel, it was still dark, and we could see Venus. And we didn't even have breakfast. We had all our food brought onto the bus, and we fired off down this road. And we left at 5:20. At 5:20, we were at the eclipse site, which I have to say, we certainly didn't expect. And this is where we were headed. These things are buttes or butts or whatever. We actually asked our guides, our astronomer guides, how you pronounce the word but, booty, or but, or butte, or whatever. And he said to us, look, the way it's pronounced is, this is me nan's buddies. Okay? Now, it was John Culshaw that told us that, so I don't know whether that's true or not. I would suspect it's not. But anyway, this again is an area of national park. These are two volcanic cones of some description. Fairly deserted area when we arrived. There wasn't anybody about. And again, we were told there's going to be thousands and thousands of people. But as soon as we got to the fence, it said caution snakes. And of course, Shirley saw this and said, snakes? What? And this is ideal snake country because you've got this wee short, stubby grass. And we were walking up the side of this sort of spent volcano cone, up this wee path. And, well, I'll tell you more in a moment. But that was virtually a view out over our Eclipse site from where I parked. I had a lot of rubbish with me. Terry said the best way to observe Eclipse, and he's absolutely right, is just to watch it and don't bother taking any photographs. He's absolutely right. And every time I go, I say, I'm not taking any pictures this time, But Shirley always ends up putting, 3 telescopes and 2 tripods in her suitcase, Some of these days she's going to catch me on. But anyway, we did all that stuff, and I could hardly carry it up the mountainside, so I gave up. And you can see our tour buses just here, and we walked up this. Now, I was saying to you about toilets. We had been told there was only one toilet. Now, you're going to be in this place for maybe 5 hours, maybe 6 hours. Temperature mid-30s. We were thinking, this is going to be awful. No shade, no nothing, But actually, the park people were fantastic. They had brought another half dozen toilets, portable toilets, but there were still half a dozen. Very important, very important. And they had also brought a huge amount of bottled water, which is great, and lip salve, not lip gloss, lip salve. And they had brought maps, and they were really, really brilliant, I have to say. We didn't expect it. It was all free. And eclipse glasses. You could have as many eclipse glasses as you wanted. I have about 24 now, so I did well. And you can see people here starting to sort of, we didn't like to stray too far, still worried about these flaming snakes about the place. And actually when we arrived, the sun was behind the body, right? It was freezing. We were absolutely frozen until the sun actually came over the beauty. And we had all sorts of interesting people on this trail. And we had this guy who had a big, didgeridoo, and every 10 feet, it was incredibly heavy, he would stop and he would let out this big brrr, it was really fairly entertaining. And we also had an eclipse cat, and I've never seen this before. This guy had a cat on his back, and he walked all the way to the top of this hill. Now, it was a mile, and it was like climbing Scrabble. It was a mile uphill, hard work, really hard work, and he had this cat on his back. And fair enough, I'm sure the cat really enjoyed it. And we had a cowboy, and this cowboy round and round to make sure everybody's seen him. And I asked him what he was doing. He says, I'm just checking for snakes. And of course, lo and behold, we had a snake. And nobody but Shirley, of course, could find this flaming snake. She went down to get some water and came back up again. Says, there's a snake down there. I says, oh, aye. But there was. Now, you can't see him. But of course, as Terry was illustrating, the light was going down, the temperature was dropping, and the old snake thought, hey, nighttime, I'm going out to see if I can find anything. So everybody had come up this path, and there was about 1,000 locals. They all took a picture of the snake. But by that time, the park rangers appeared, and they guarded the snake completely through totality. You weren't allowed anywhere near him. So anyway, I was just intending to show you my setup, which is that me there? Can't see it from this angle, it's not me. Sorry, it's right in front of me. This is me here. I took a telescope on a guided mount, and my wee camera. And I can tell you that's enough. You don't want to bring any more than that. And then, because we had all this time to kill, and we had nothing to do but stand there, we decided to climb the buddy. Now, somebody said it's a mile. A mile, a mile. What's a mile? It took us about an hour and a half to climb to the top of this flaming thing. And that's looking into the caldera, which again is very scrub. And it's quite high up, as you can sort of see. I climbed up to the top of it there. But again, you get a nice view over Idaho. You can see how flat it is, massively flat for as far as you can see. But we just about managed to get back in time for the start of the eclipse. And you can see the first wee nick out of the sun there. And you can also see, hey, the astronomers' friends, there's a few sunspots. Now, they're very important at eclipses because they allow you to get a really good focus if you're taking pictures. And there's really nothing to do for the first while, but the first hour and a half, but sort of take pictures of the sun. Oops, wrong way. No, right way. No, it's just showing you. Well, everybody then started to say, hey, you know, the eclipse has started. Let's get into it. And some people had the foresight to bring silly things with holes in them, because if you do that during the partial eclipse, you can see little tiny eclipse suns. Gives you something to do while you're waiting for the eclipse, the total bit to start. But gradually, the old eclipse ran on, and the moon eventually got to there, which is almost it. And then all of a sudden, you can see we had the sheet as well. I never saw any shadow bands. I've seen them before, saw them in Turkey. But, you know, eventually we got the diamond ring. And Terry took my pictures up. I'm sure you're going to be disappointed in them. But actually, I was very pleased with them. And I was fiddling about so much, sometimes with the camera, I nearly missed taking some decent pictures. But anyway, you can see the little tiny prominence here, the little hedge prominence. Again, diamond ring. And you can see some prominences looking around here. So fairly nice. And as the eclipse proceeded, you can see that little Bailey's bead there. There's one either side of it. And then there's a little Bailey's bead and then a little tiny one. And that's the light actually shining down the valleys on the moon. And I was quite pleased. Those photographs are as sharp as any that I've actually seen. And that's the totally eclipsed sun and the inner corona. And then you can see, as you lengthen the exposures, you start to see more and more, and eventually you see the outer corona as well, and you see this distinctive picture. Now, sort of cats tended to feature in this eclipse, because somebody said the eclipse looks like a cat's face. You know, here's the ears, and here's his chinny down here. And of course, there's a star over here, which, you know, more about in a second. And one of the things which I'd sort of heard, and Pete Lawrence told us about, was that during the eclipse you actually get something called earthshine, which most of you will be familiar with on a moon. If you see a little crescent moon, you'll see a bit of the moon reflected. The Earth's light reflects up onto the moon. So I overexposed, and you can see during an eclipse, a total solar eclipse, you can actually see earthshine, which I was quite pleased with. And not only that, but you can spend waste a lot of time adding all your pictures up, and you get some pictures like this. And well, it's okay. It's not bad. You can start to see a little bit more detail. But I remember that Tom Ray did a talk, and he said, look, you know, during the 1919 eclipse, that they were able to get some stars. Now, I don't know if you can see those lines or not, but of all the eclipses pictures that I've taken previously, I've never seen any stars in it. But so I overexposed severely on some of the pictures. This one. And hey, lo and behold, I could get lots of stars, which I didn't realize I could. And I was able to look these ones up. And these are about 7.5. Here's one's 8. And there was a couple others that I couldn't find on the star chart. But again, if you really overexpose on your photographs, you can again see our shine in the prominences trying to kick in around the sides there. So, and then, before you know it, Terry's eclipse seemed to last an awful long time. You know, when you're taking pictures and you're watching the thing, it literally just goes like that. And, you know, these prominences start to leak out, and you start to see the second diamond ring, and you realize, hey, it's all over. The eclipse is gone until the next one. And, you know, there's quite a bit of activity here just as the sun is about to make its reappearance. And then, all of a sudden it's over, and you're back into looking for the sunspots again. This is probably the last little kick, and you can see it was right down beside those little sunspots down in the limb there. So at that stage, of course, they've gone away and they're not even interested. But a couple of other photographs. This was a photograph which I didn't take, and it was right in the top of that booty, and you could climb away up there if you had the time to do it. And this picture appeared all over the world. It was franchised by one of the press agencies. But the thing that really interested me, I mean, there's a total solar eclipse going on, and this plonker here is playing with his phone, you know. he's playing flipping phone games or something. But anyway, that was pretty nice. That was Shirley's picture, which wasn't bad, you know, it was okay. It's in astronomy now, but she didn't get the snake in it, which disappointed us, or the cat. It was all over, so I was quite happy. Actually fairly exhausted, because we'd been there about 5 hours at the time. And then you can do all this sort of stupid stuff where you do it all together. I quite liked that one. I thought it showed the progression of the diamond ring and then expiring. And the guy standing next to me took this one, which again was on the BAA site, stuff like that. So that was pretty good. Wee bit disappointed he didn't get more people anymore, but hey, pretty good. Like Terry, we then, the following day, what do you do the day after the eclipse? Well, we headed off to Yellowstone Park, which was quite close to us. We saw some buffaloes, we saw the geyser, you know, we saw it erupting, we saw the lakes, they're beautiful, fantastic, I have to say, all that stuff. And that is actually why Yellowstone is called Yellowstone, because it's got Yellowstone in it, Yellowstone Park. And there's some beautiful waterfalls as well. As Terry says, you need a week to be in there. We drove all day, and it was Carmageddon. It was bumper to tail the whole way through that park. It was really hard going. And then we actually stopped off at the Great Salt Lake on the way home as well. Now this is Mr. Culshaw again. Let him have the last word. Unfortunately, the sound's not great.
Very fascinating indeed. Yes, it was a tweet. I find it superb eclipse. Very fascinating indeed.
Right, thank you, John. And last eclipse, we went back, or last slide, we went back to the Clark Planetarium, and there was a big notice in the door. People were trying to bring their eclipse glasses back, which I thought was very funny. But you weren't getting any money for them. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Andy. Do you guys both want to do some